The cassette was in the lost and found box for 11 days. Nobody had claimed it. Nobody had asked about it. The receptionist at the front desk of Barry White's record label in Los Angeles had put it there on a Tuesday morning after finding it on the counter with a handwritten note underneath it that said, "Please make sure Mr. White hears this. My name is Gloria Reeves. I've been trying to reach someone for 8 months. This is the last time I will try." The receptionist had done what receptionists do with unsolicited demo tapes left by strangers at record label front desks. She had put it in the box with the other unsolicited demo tapes left by strangers at record label front desks, the box that was emptied at the end of every month into a larger box in the mailroom that was eventually discarded. It had been there for 11 days when Barry White's personal assistant, a meticulous woman named Diane, who had worked for Barry for 3 years, and who treated the administration of his professional life with the focused precision of someone who understood that the details were what made the larger things possible, came to the front desk to collect his messages and noticed the lost and found box sitting open on the counter. She looked at the box. She looked at the cassette inside it. She looked at the note. She picked up the cassette. Diane did not play the cassette immediately. She was not in the habit of making decisions about Barry White's time based on impulse. She carried it back to her desk. She read the note again, "The 8 months, the last time I will try," and she sat with it for a moment. Then she took the cassette to the small playback room at the end of the corridor, and she put it in the player, and she pressed play. The recording was rough. A single microphone, clearly, in a space that was not a studio. The ambient sound of a room with hard walls, possibly a kitchen or a bathroom, the way people record when they do not have access to anything better and need to get something down before it leaves them. A piano, simple, unadorned, the kind of playing that is about the song rather than the playing. And then a voice. Diane sat up in her chair. The voice was a woman's. Not a trained voice, not in the formal sense, not the kind of voice that had been taught how to do what it was doing, but doing it anyway, with the specific authority of someone who knows exactly what they are trying to say and has found, without assistance, the exact way to say it. The song was about waiting, not the patient kind of waiting, the other kind. The kind that happens when you have been waiting so long that the waiting itself has become the life and you can no longer clearly remember what you were waiting for. It was the most precise description of a specific human feeling that Diane had heard in a long time. She played it again, then again. Then she took the cassette out of the player and walked down the corridor to Barry White's office and knocked on the door. Barry White was on the phone. He looked up when Diane came in. She held up the cassette. She did not say anything. Barry White looked at her face, the specific expression on it, the expression of someone who has just heard something and needs someone else to confirm that they heard it too. And he said into the phone, "I'll call you back." He listened to the cassette once without speaking. When it finished, he sat for a moment. Then he said, "Play it again." Diane played it again. When it finished the second time, Barry White looked at the cassette player for a long moment. He looked at the note, "The 8 months, the last time I will try," that Diane had placed on the desk beside the player. "Find her," he said. Finding Gloria Reeves took 4 days. The note had a name, but no telephone number, no address, no other identifying information beyond the 8 months and the tone of someone who had decided this was the last attempt. Diane worked backward from the record label's intake logs, from the building's visitor records, from the receptionist's memory of a Tuesday morning 11 days earlier. The receptionist remembered a woman, young, mid-20s. She had come in the morning, before the offices were fully open. She had placed the cassette on the counter with the note underneath it, and she had not waited to speak to anyone. She had walked back out. The receptionist had not stopped her. She had not seemed like someone who wanted to be stopped. Diane found her through a musicians' union registry. Gloria Reeves, listed as a pianist, with an address in Inglewood. She called the number. It rang 9 times. No answer. She called again in the afternoon. A woman picked up. "Is this Gloria Reeves?" Diane said. A silence. "Who is this?" the woman said. "My name is Diane. I'm Barry White's personal assistant. He has heard your cassette. He would like to meet with you." Another silence. Longer. "This isn't—" Gloria stopped. "This isn't someone calling to tell me no again." "No," Diane said. "This is someone calling to ask when you're available." Gloria Reeves was 24 years old. She had grown up in Inglewood, 6 blocks from the Forum, in a house where the piano had been there before she was, and had become hers by the process of being the only one who would sit at it for hours. She had been writing songs since she was 16, not as a hobby, as the thing. The one thing that organized everything else around it. The way some people have one thing that tells them who they are, even when everything else is uncertain. She had been trying to get someone to listen to her songs for 8 months. Not informally, with the specific and systematic effort of someone who has decided that the work is good enough and that the problem is therefore one of access, of getting the work in front of the right person, and who has set about solving the access problem with everything available to them. She had approached 6 record labels. She had been turned away by 5 of them without the cassette being played. The 6th had played it, called her back 3 days later, and told her, with the particular economy of an industry that delivers verdicts without explanation, that it wasn't what they were looking for. She had approached 4 producers through mutual contacts. 2 had not responded. 1 had responded to say he was not taking unsolicited material. 1 had listened and said the voice wasn't commercial. The voice isn't commercial meant Gloria Reeves's own voice, the voice on the demo, the voice she used to demonstrate what the song was doing because she did not have access to anyone else's voice. What she had not been told, what no one had told her because no one had listened carefully enough to understand it, was that the songs themselves were extraordinary. She came to Barry White's office on a Thursday afternoon. She wore her best clothes, dark trousers, a white blouse, and she arrived 7 minutes early and sat in the reception area with her hands in her lap and the expression of someone who has been here before, in the sense of having come to places like this place and has learned not to need them to go well in order to survive them. Barry White came out to reception to meet her. Not Calvin, not Diane. Barry White himself. Gloria stood up. She was a small woman, younger than her composure, with the particular quality of someone who has been disappointed enough times to have built something over it. Not a wall, something more functional than a wall. A working surface. Barry White shook her hand. "I heard your song," he said. "The one on the cassette." Gloria waited. "I want to hear the others," he said. The others were played on the piano in the small rehearsal room at the back of the building. Gloria played and sang 6 songs, the 6 she considered the most complete, with the focused directness of someone who has learned to present the work without the work having to carry the weight of her needing it to land. Barry White sat in the corner and listened to all 6 without interrupting. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. "How long have you been writing?" he asked. 8 years, Gloria said. Seriously, 8 years. And no one has— No, she said, simply, without embellishment. The no of someone who has long since finished being surprised by it. Barry White looked at the piano. He looked at this young woman sitting at it with her hands in her lap and her working surface in place, and 8 years of the one thing underneath it that had not stopped, regardless of what the industry had or had not done with it. "I want to record these," he said. "Not all at once. 3 to start. I want to produce them properly. Full arrangement, real studio, the voice they deserve." Gloria looked at him, not with the expression of someone receiving good news, with the expression of someone who has learned, through specific and repeated experience, to be careful about good news until it has proven itself by continuing to be true in the days after it is delivered. "Why?" she asked. Barry White looked at her. "Because the cassette stopped me," he said. "I was in a meeting. Diane brought it in. I told the person I was on the phone with that I would call them back. I don't do that." He looked at the piano. "The last time a piece of music stopped me in the middle of something else, I spent the next year trying to make it exist properly. I intend to do the same thing here." The sessions began 6 weeks later. Barry White produced all 3 songs himself. He brought in his arranger, Gene Page, who listened to the demos and sat down at the piano and began building what the songs were asking for. The orchestral architecture that would give Gloria Reeves's voice the room it needed to do what Barry White had heard it doing on a rough cassette recording in a playback room at the end of a corridor. Gloria came to every session. She sat in the control room and watched the songs become what she had heard them being in her head for the years she had been writing them. She did not cry in the sessions. She cried in the parking lot afterward, alone, in her car, with the windows up. The specific crying of someone who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has been unexpectedly relieved of part of it and does not yet know what to do with their hands. The first song was released in 1975 under Barry White's production, with Gloria Reeves's name on the label as songwriter. It reached number 14 on the R&B chart, not a massive hit, but a real one, the kind that opens the next door. The second song reached number 6. The third was recorded by another artist, a major label act who had heard the first 2 and contacted Barry White's office asking about the songwriter. That recording reached number 2. Gloria Reeves spent the next decade writing songs that other people performed. Not as a compromise, as the work. The thing she had always been doing, finding the precise language for the specific feelings that resist language and giving it to voices that could carry it to the places she could not reach alone. She won her first Grammy in 1981. She was 30 years old. She had been writing for 14 years. She had been trying to be heard for 8 months before the cassette ended up in a lost and found box for 11 days, and a woman named Diane noticed it on a Tuesday and picked it up. Barry White was at the Grammy ceremony. He was not nominated that year. He came because Gloria had asked him, and because he understood, without her having to explain it, what it would mean to have someone there who had been in the room when the thing that led to this moment was just a cassette in a lost and found box. Afterward, in the corridor, Gloria said, "I want to ask you something I've never asked." Barry White waited. "The cassette was in the lost and found for 11 days. If Diane hadn't picked it up, if she had walked past that box one more time, it was going to be thrown away." She looked at him. "Did you know that when you heard it?" Barry White looked at her for a moment. "No," he said. I didn't know that until you just told me. He was quiet for a moment. Does it matter? Gloria thought about it. It matters that it almost didn't happen, she said. Because I need to know that. I need to remember that it almost didn't happen. So I never forget what it means that it did. The cassette is in Gloria Reeves's house in Los Angeles, on a shelf, beside the Grammy. She has been asked, in interviews over the years, what she would say to her 24-year-old self, the woman who left the cassette on a counter in Inglewood on a Tuesday morning and walked back out because she did not want to be stopped. She says the same thing every time. Leave the cassette, even when you think no one is listening, even when you've been told no so many times that the no has started to sound like the truth. Leave the cassette, because you don't know whose desk it's going to land on. You don't know who is going to walk past a box on a Tuesday morning and pick it up. You don't know who is going to stop in the middle of something else and say, "Find her." You just have to leave it there and trust that the right person is on their way.